Kia ora koutou, Markie here again. I'm doing a fairly lengthy walk, functional walk to get somewhere, which enables me to shoot some videos, which makes me feel super efficient because I'm multitasking, and it justifies the shaky camera. Not that I need to justify the shaky camera. And if you want to know about the shaky camera, that is explained in another video, and there is a reason for it. So, I'm in grizzled walrus mode today because we're going to be talking about retroactive jealousy, and this is a special video request from a patron. Now, what do I mean by a patron? I mean a member of the aristocracy that pays for me to live in a cottage on her country estate in order for me to continue my work. Well, I wish. However, patrons are still fantastic. So patrons are people who have joined my Patreon channel, where you'll find all the videos that are on YouTube, plus some extra ones just for patrons. And patrons are people that pay usually a modest amount monthly. It can be as little as the price of a cup of coffee per month, to help support what I do, because I don't make any money from YouTube videos. Most of nearly 99.9% of what I do is free and freely available. But one of the perks isn't a good word, one of the benefits, one of the rewards that people who sign up as patrons have is that they can request videos, and I will do my best to produce them. Obviously it has to be something that's within my kind of skill set. I'm not going to do a video on I don't know, restoring 18th century carriages, for example. So this was a question from a patron who I'll keep anonymous. Very grateful for this because it's great to have these kind of questions. So somebody that wanted me to do a video on all the things that kind of go with retroactive jealousy. So I'm going to look at the symptoms of it and the correlations with other things. So we've touched on this in a whole bunch of different videos. This is kind of bringing it all together. So yeah, it should be quite useful, hopefully, and give you a kind of overview. So quite a good video for somebody that's kind of newish to getting their heads around retroactive jealousy. So first of all, I'm going to say that normally, if a patron requests a video, then I put it on Patreon just for the eyes of people who are on Patreon. Patreon is the platform. A patron is somebody that kind of acts like a sponsor and supports the channel, and I tend to kind of mix up the words all the time, which is probably quite annoying. So what I tend to do with these kind of questions is I make those exclusive to patrons, so just the patrons can see them. But I think it'd be quite good to just open this one up really to everyone, and also kind of it's just an opportunity to tell you a little bit about why I have the Patreon channel, and how you might be, if you're up for it, willing to help support us. And there's details in the comments below. If they're not there yet, they will be soon, that tell you how to sign up to Patreon. It is a little bit tricky actually, but it is worth doing. I am on Patreon and I sponsor people. So all the people on YouTube who are my favourites, people that I regularly go to, I sponsor them. Only for $1. I don't spend vast amounts of my hard-earned cash, but it all helps because people, sometimes have thousands of patrons, and it enables them to kind of do their vlogging full time, and put a lot more into it, put more research into it, invest things into it. So anyway, enough commercial breaky stuff. Let's get into retroactive jealousy. So first off, what we need to say is that retroactive jealousy, there's no clinical research on it that I am aware of. If you do know of any, please send it me. I'd love to see it. But as far as I'm aware, there's research, I think, in things written on pathological jealousy, and jealousy in general, but not retroactive jealousy. There is some research being conducted, which is great, and there's whispers and hopes of more research being done. But at the moment, we don't know anything. So where do we get our information from? Well, we get it from clinical work, from actually working with people, and from what people also share on internet forums and things like that. So that's where we know what we know, and therefore we could have some things wrong. There could be things that we've missed, but this is what we have at the moment. I mean, anecdotal information, is very useful. It shouldn't be dismissed, but we don't know a lot. Okay, so I'm going to tell you what we know, or what we think we know. Okay, and there does seem to be a lot of consensus around most of these things. And I often have thoughts and ideas that need to be tested. So sometimes I'll shoot a video that says, I think, there may be a connection with retroactive jealousy and X. What do you guys think? And then I get feedback from people. It's not scientific, but it's the best that we've got at the moment. Okay, so retroactive jealousy is believed to be, I would say, a complex form of obsessive compulsive disorder. Okay, and it has similarities with another form of obsessive compulsive disorder, which is known as relationship obsessive compulsive disorder, or ROCD. Often big crossovers with that, or similarities, certainly similar flavours. Okay, so what do we mean by obsessive compulsive disorder? Okay, so it's important to get that obsessive compulsive disorder is a serious psychological condition. People often say, I'm a bit OCD, because they always stir their tea in a certain way. If you always stir your tea in a certain way, that doesn't mean you're a bit OCD. It might mean that you have some compulsions and you might have some obsessions. We'll get into what those are in a minute. But there's no disorder, okay? So the point to which it becomes a disorder means it's making your life either miserable or practically unlivable. And it's causing you a great deal of pain. So, lots of people have the O and the C, but not so many people have the D, okay? And it's often considered a kind of a lower level mental health issue. So people think of things like kind of psychosis as higher end mental health problems, mental health conditions, and I think of OCD as more like just a neurosis, that could be kind of laughed off, but actually it's really serious, it has serious effects on people's lives. So kind of we laugh about those. To think about Frasier, think about Niles Crane, about how he gets his little kind of handkerchief out and dusts off his seat before he sits down. So it's kind of, supposed to kind of portray him as a bit kind of neurotic, and that's kind of supposed to be, amusing, especially because he's a psychiatrist. But actually, there's nothing amusing about OCD. Okay, so OCD, let's look at the O and let's look at the C. So obsessive, that is to do with thoughts. Thoughts are obsessions, so it goes on in your head. Now, there's a school of thought that says that there's a different kind of strand of OCD, sometimes called pure O, which is all about obsessions, which is all about what goes in your head, which I think is a good argument for. And something called obsessive thought, intrusive thoughts comes into that. Intrusive thoughts is really interesting and very common. So maybe we'll do some more on that. Sorry about the traffic. I was talking about Frasier Crane, and a crane drives past. There we go. So with retroactive jealousy, we know all about the obsessive thoughts. So that's kind of what we call rumination. So rumination is like is similar to what cows do when they chew the cud. It's kind of going over something again and again and again and again. It's the wash, rinse, repeat cycle. So that's part of the obsession. So it's the frequency of the thoughts, and about the thoughts keep coming back, and you think about this for a long time and for a lot of the time, and about the emotional impact of the thoughts. Okay, so if you're engaged in, a hobby or a job that requires you to think about that a lot, or you're deeply in love and you're thinking a lot about your beloved, that's all great. That's good, because they're pleasant. They're pleasant thoughts. It's pleasant rumination. But with retroactive jealousy, it's unpleasant rumination. Okay, so that's where the obsession comes in. So obsession also means it's your kind of primary focus. You'll focus on that above all else. Okay. Compulsion. Okay, so there's the compulsion. The word compulsion refers to actions. You're compelled to do something. So this kind of, the classic example of this with OCD is, and we all kind of, this is what we think of with OCD. We think of compulsive hand washing. And sometimes it's actually easier to look at other forms of OCD to understand RJ better. So somebody with hand washing related OCD, their obsessive thoughts will be about contamination, be about bacteria, be about kind of germs, about disease, about becoming soiled, dirty. And the compulsion is to wash. And when people wash their hands, they feel better for a little while. Okay, but the whole thing continues again. So one hand washing won't do it for long, really. And then what can happen is it can become more and more extreme, so that the hand washing becomes, vigorous scrubbing with a brush. It becomes, things like using bleach, and you get to the extent where people's hands are bleeding, and it's that's how serious RJ is. RJ and obsessive compulsive disorder. So the compulsions are the actions. So with retroactive jealousy, the compulsions are things like asking questions. I'm just kicking something that's in the path so no one trips over it. Or more broadly, I would say seeking reassurance through information. Okay, because it's not necessarily asking questions. This is where all the kind of snooping in people's diaries, looking on people's social media profiles, either your partners or your partner's exes, doing kind of research, looking into things. That's where all that comes into. That's the compulsion. That's the action, which tends to create temporary relief, but then actually sets the cycle back in motion again. And that's why, when treating OCD, one of the easiest and quickest ways to begin is by stopping the action, because it's easier to stop an action than it is to stop a thought. We can't really stop thoughts, but we talk about that in other videos as well. So that's the kind of the focus with OCD. So retroactive jealousy. So the feelings that come up in retroactive jealousy aren't necessarily even jealousy. Usually jealousy is a part of it, but jealousy is kind of a bit of a catch-all phrase. Often it's more about disgust. Often it's more about judgment, feeling that your partner is bad in some way. It might have an element of contamination, that your partner's sexual history has left them soiled or contaminated on some way. Now, it won't be logical, but these things aren't logical. And anxiety is primarily, obsessive compulsive disorders are driven by anxiety. They're anxiety disorders, and the anxiety is resolved temporarily through the compulsion, but then it kind of whole thing starts off again. So that's the anatomy of it, really. And I suppose just to go back to the obsessive part, the rumination isn't just kind of aimless rumination. So the thinking about it again and again and again, and for great lengths of time, isn't just for the sake of it. There is a kind of goal to it. And what happens with people with retroactive jealousy is they think that they can think their way out of it, but somehow, the way that they're looking at it, they've kind of missed some key thing. So it seems like their partner is this terrible person that's done these terrible things, but also is this wonderful person that they love, and they can't reconcile the two. So they think, not necessarily consciously, but the goal really in the rumination is to kind of resolve that in some way. People think that they can solve mental health problems by thinking through them, like you might solve a maths problem, or like you might solve any other life problem. So if you, financial problem, let's say you've got your problem is that your kids are getting a bit older, need more space, you haven't got much money, but you don't really want to move, but you need more space. That's a problem that you can ruminate, positively and constructively on. Okay, you think that through. You think, okay, what can we do? Well, maybe I could get an extra job, pay a bit more money, and maybe we could remortgage the house and build an extension. Generating ideas and solutions. Okay, so we're using that process to deal with an illogical problem, which is all in the mind anyway. So the obsessive thinking is not pointless. It's not goalless, let's say. It is ultimately it's pointless, because it will never achieve the goal that you're looking for, because it's not that kind of problem. It's not a problem that you can think your way out of. There are problems that you can think your way out of, and there are problems that you can't. So that's part of the process of that. Now, I'm getting close to my destination now. So what I think we're going to do is make this a two-parter. So this is, go into a bit more depth of the symptomology and the anatomy of retroactive jealousy, and then we'll do one that kind of summarises all the things that kind of tend to come with it. These things often don't come alone. So we'll do that as a part two to this one. So I think we've covered everything with this one. If you think I've missed anything, let me know in the comments below, and we'll be back with you very shortly with a part 2. Hope you found this helpful. Rangimarie.